Spike is president of the Orange County chapter of the Hessians Motorcycle Club. Spike also trained as an architect with a professional background in design and environmental engineering. As part of his role, Spike is a liaison officer for the Confederation of Clubs in Southern California, which pushes for bikers' rights and legislation and employs lobbyists and attorneys for the cause. First of all, Spike, great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Tell us about the Hessians Motorcycle Club. I mean, you've got famous clubs around Southern California. You've got Hells Angels, the Mongols, the Hessians. So tell us about your club.
We're well established here, and especially in Orange County. We were probably one of the pioneering large clubs there. And we started off March 7th, 1968. And we grew very fast at that period of time. There was a lot of ex-military guys that come back from doing their duty for their country, and kind of missing the camaraderie that they had out there. And a lot of motorcycle clubs evolved at that period, and we was one of them.
So why the bad publicity? I mean, you haven't been portrayed, these motorcycle clubs, as pillars of the law.
I think initially, at that period, if you look at society during the early 70s and the late 60s and the baby boomers and everything, it was a period of time when we were experimenting. It was an experimental time with drugs. There was a lot of changes going on in the world, and I think that was a reflection of the times. And yeah, they were a little crazy, and there was a lot more physical altercations and things going on, and that was acceptable back in that period, a lot more than it is today. Now, if you raise an eyebrow, it can be looked as a terrorist threat, and so things have changed a lot. And I think the main thing is the stigma of the 60s and 70s has kept with us over that period of time, and we've been used, I think, as a scapegoat to some extent, as being the bad boys. There's always got to be some bad boys out there.
Okay, let's talk about, say, life as a biker. I mean, you see on these films is they basically show the biker as living in the bar, having a rumble every night, and back to the bar. I mean, I don't think you guys ever sleep in the movies.
Well, they got that part right, yeah.
Take away the weekend warriors and stuff. Looking at, say, hardcore biker gangs or biker groups or clubs. We are definitely clubs, and the reason I press that is because society now has put us in, being in a gang, so to speak, it didn't mean anything, 20 years ago. Now, we are clubs, and the difference is quite significant to us. If we was to be a gang member, and I may say that there's not a court in the country that has actually deemed a motorcycle club a gang. There's been many attempts, but to try and define a gang in itself has been very difficult, because the definitions to date of gang members, you could have any number of people, from the Boy Scouts of America to your local Elks member. It's a very technical line there, and it affects us very much. If you was to get arrested for something that a club member might get arrested for, and they deem that person a gang member, the sentences are doubled. You're treated a lot different. Your rights are different, and so that's why in the legislative areas we're trying to protect the biker. We're one of the few minority groups out there that doesn't have protection in the system. We can go to a bar or a restaurant and say you can't come in just merely by what we're wearing, and there's nothing we can do about it, and there's no real reason to prevent us going into a place. It's odd that you need the protection now, and you're going to the lawmakers to give you that. People would think, well, surely they can look after themselves. Is this progress, or is this part of the aging process? Because, I mean, let's face it, we're all getting a bit older. We all get a bit smarter eventually. Why is it happening now?
I think really now society, not so much society, but the government is coming down very strong on us, because I think they see us as the last people to be outspoken. We don't take things lying down. We've got some very strong patriots in the motorcycle clubs. Most of these, as I said, a lot of military people, the most patriotic people in the country, and yet they're using 9/11 as an example to try and prove us to come under terrorist activities, to be able to listen to our phone conversations and do all this. Now, I believe in fair play. You know, if we're doing stuff wrong and you do the crime, you pay the time. But when we're not doing anything, and we're not, and most of the clubs out there have very strict policies on making sure the clubs are not involved in anything. We can't be accountable for every single individual in our organization, the same as any organizations. The police and the DA's department locally, we've had top officials in both the police department just recently been suspended, and several years ago we had one of the top people in the DA. Huge offenses, but you don't tar and feather the whole police department because of one bad apple, and that's what we're dealing with. And we're dealing with the media, we're dealing with the history, because we were the first to admit we were rowdy back in the day.
Rowdy's a good word for it. Rowdy. What's another word you use besides rowdy? Boisterous?
Maybe, yes.
But see, those days, have they actually left, or are they still there, but you're not, the media doesn't focus so much on those, or, I mean, is it still there? I mean,
just by nature, bikers don't mix into mainstream society. We have our parties away from everyone else. We try and be ourselves, but now what's happened, we're being, spending huge amounts of money to infiltrate the clubs and try and find some dirt, and there really isn't. The time after time after time, you get a big hype in the media, and if we go back historically to the biggest hype of all, which was Hollister, where we have the picture on Time Life magazine of a drunken biker on a motorcycle surrounded by beer cans. And that whole thing, there was nothing to report after the war, and that was completely hyped up. And it's been proven to be hyped up. They found all the people involved and talked to them. And then we had the Wild Bunch, and the movie did, hype up that whole event at Hollister. So historically speaking, we've always been, we're the bad boys, and we all know we need law enforcement. We know, but we want fair play, and that's what we're doing with the legislative side of things.
So then, how do you achieve this fair play?
Well, I think they've actually taught us how to be armchair attorneys. We know our laws very well, and we could probably recite many of the vehicle stops better than the officers can.
Through experience.
Through experience, and that's where they've got the ace in the hole. Normally, is when you go to court, you don't know what the procedure is in a courtroom. You don't know what your rights are. You don't know when they're stretching the law of the land, to get an arrest. And so now we've become armchair attorneys. We have lobbyists, we have professional attorneys in some of our clubs, and we're just looking out for fair play and to make sure that we're represented, and that government doesn't use us as a scapegoat for everything.
If one was to become a brother with, say, the Hessians, for example, what's the process?
First of all, we want to make sure that somebody really wants to be with us and we want to be with them. So you have a prospecting period, and that prospecting period, you'll have someone that's responsible for you, and they'll be teaching you the history of the club. They'll be teaching you about biker protocol, and we'll want to make sure that they want to make a commitment, that they really want to ride, and we have mandatory runs during the year where we all get together and ride. And so it's a real strong brotherhood. You go through various stages. You have a bottom rocker first in our club, then you get a top rocker as well, then finally get the center patch. And to get that center patch, everyone in the club's got to vote a yes for you. So, it's imperative that you get around to meet all the brothers and you get to know people. And so that's why we become so close. A network is, we're around one another a lot, and we enjoy our company, and we enjoy the safe things. We're motorcycle enthusiasts. We love to ride, and we love the biker lifestyle.
So you really then, once they get to the stage of the center patch, you know for sure that they actually want to be part of this great club. I mean, it's a club full of history.
It really is. I mean, it sounds cornball, but we're kind of the modern day, the outlaws of the West. They were fine people. They came over and developed the West, and they were law and order for a while. We've got our own law and order. We take care of our own, and we certainly don't put up with fools.
Just the very nature of the club itself. I mean, tats, the helmet. First of all, give me a look.
The look.
That's great. That's great. But all that sort of stuff, you leave yourself a little wide open for the more adventurous out there that want to gain some attention because of what the Hessians stand for or what the other clubs stand for. How do you deal with that? I mean, but seriously, people would say the old knuckle sandwich or something, but how actually do you deal with that?
That's how society has changed. I mean, I remember growing up as a kid in school, I'd have a little fisticuffs out in the playground. It was fine. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. And I think, guys, that's part of growing up. And if you can have a little fisticuffs and then pick one another up and shake hands, same on the rugby field. I played rugby for many years, and I've had guys, knock out my front teeth and then pick me up off the floor and take me into the bar and have a pint of Guinness afterwards. and it's just, that's what it was all about. Now, of course, if there's any problems, you can't have a fisticuffs anymore. I mean, for one thing, you can't, we'd be prepared to have a fisticuffs, but the bottom line is there's so many guns and knives out there, and you don't know who you're dealing with. And some of the old, Marquis of Queensberry rules, they've gone now. They're a thing of the past.
Do you ever have fear for your own safety, though? Because now being president of the Orange County chapter,
it really doesn't mean very much being in that position. It's just that, I was probably away that weekend that the position got filled, and so I had to do it. But no, joking all aside, there's times when, you're fearful. There's been times when, sometimes I don't feel too comfortable when the law enforcement agencies pull me over for a traffic stop, and I'm laying down on the ground, face down on the concrete with 15 or 20 guns pointed at me, and it could be one person sneezing with a hair trigger, and boom, I'm history.
Yeah.
The fact that they think that because we've got long hair and tattoos and ride a bike that we're all packing weapons, we all do drugs, which I do not neither. It's and I say to them, there's better things to be doing. I've been held on the ground at some point for 3/4 an hour, laying down on the concrete, a man over 50 years old, and I've said, can I at least stand up? I'm not going anywhere. You have 20 officers, same amount of cars and a helicopter up above.
But it looks good on camera, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think they have to justify their numbers. There's a little bit of politicking going in there.
Environmental engineering, which is pretty bizarre, but you have another life besides the El Presidente of the Hessians. Tell us about that.
I worked the corporate world for quite a long time while still riding motorcycles, and we have all sorts of cross sections of people within the clubs, the corporate world is just as terrifying, if not more so, than the biker world. It's you're dealing with some people that don't have the raw honesty that the bikers have with one another. So if someone doesn't like you, they'll still be patting you on the back, and then you take the knife out at the end of the fiscal year when you find they've got a big raise and you didn't. But I gave it a good try, the corporate world. I worked as an architect. I worked in aerospace. I worked for an engineering company. I have a geology, maths, art background. So
you're not just a pretty face.
I wish I was just a pretty face, but I just wish I had a pretty face, and then I might do all right.
But I won't comment on that because I still like to walk. So where to now for the Hessians?
We have a series of MROs, which are motorcycle rights organizations. We have a BATE, which is a BATE is a really strong organization that tries to educate everyone through its American Brotherhood, and we we're trying to educate people to motorcyclists, and it makes a lot of sense to have motorcycles on the road. Take up less parking spot. They're not such a problem with air quality, and a lot of the cities in Europe and the rest of the world have motorcycle-only parking in the cities because they encourage the use of motorcycles rather than cars congesting up with one person in them. So the MROs and the ABATE and all these other organizations are there to protect our rights and to make sure that we can coexist with everyone.
If somebody wants to find out more about, say, the Hessians or the whole kit and caboodle about, moving forward with all the clubs, how do they do that?
The website that we have is hessiansmc.com, and it just has a little history on there about where we got our name from the Hessians that came from Hesse in Germany. The English actually hired them to work with them against the when the Redcoats come over in the War of Independence, and the Hessians were a mercenary set of soldiers and actually brought the Christmas tree to America.
You had all your brothers around you, and actually you had all your friends around you, your family, the whole lot. And they were to say to you, Spike, in one word only, how would you describe yourself? How would you describe yourself?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I really can't say. I like to be personable, I think. I love comedy and humor. So I just like to be personable. I like to be able to get along with people. And so I think personable would be the word.
Give us that look.
I can't give that look unless, it's... Then when they see that look, say, he was giving that look.
He was making that look. Spike, thank you very much.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, as always. Thank you, Mike.